It's the middle of the night. You're fast asleep, and then around 2 a.m., your whole village quietly wakes up. Not because of a fire, not because of an attack, because that's just what people did. For most of human history, nobody slept through the night in one long block the way you do. They slept in two. And what they did in the gap between those two sleeps is one of the strangest, most forgotten parts of how people used to live. So tonight, let's crawl into a medieval bed, lice and all, and find out how badly people actually slept. Here's the first thing you need to unlearn. You've been told your whole life that humans need 8 straight hours of sleep. One block, lights off, lights on, done. But that idea is shockingly new. For thousands of years, sleep didn't work like that at all. A historian named Roger Ekirch spent years digging through old diaries, court records, medical books, and letters, and he kept noticing a strange phrase that showed up over and over again. People wrote about their first sleep, and then their second sleep. At first, he thought it was just an odd turn of phrase, but it kept appearing, or it's more than 500 different old documents. It turned out first sleep and second sleep weren't poetic, they were literal. People went to bed not long after sunset, slept for a few hours, and then woke up around midnight. They'd stay awake for an hour, sometimes two, and then they'd go back to bed for their second sleep until morning. This was so normal, so obvious to them that they barely bothered explaining it. It was just how nights worked. Now here's the part that's going to live in your head. What did they do during that hour awake in the middle of the night? The answer is pretty much everything. People got up and added wood to the fire. They checked on their animals. They prayed because the middle of the night was considered a peaceful, holy time to talk to God. Some people just lay in bed and thought about the dreams they just had. Others got up and visited their neighbors. Picture that for a second.
It's 1 in the morning, and your neighbor casually wanders over for a chat, because everyone's awake anyway.
And yes, a lot of people use that hour for sex. In fact, one French doctor in the 1500s claimed this was the best time for it. He figured working class couples had so many children precisely because they woke up rested in the middle of the night with the energy for it and went right back to sleep afterward. So this quiet hour in the dark was when a huge amount of medieval life actually happened. Babies were made, prayers were said, neighbors gossiped, all while you today would just be unconscious. And so why did we stop? Why don't you wake up at 2 a.m. to chat and pray and visit people? The answer is light. For almost all of history, night was genuinely dark. When the sun went down, your world shrank to the tiny circle of a candle or a fire, if you could even afford one. There was nothing to do, so people went to bed early. And with that many hours of darkness, your body naturally split its sleep in two. Then, in the 1800s, artificial lighting arrived. Suddenly, the night was usable. People stayed up later, crammed their sleep into one block to fit the new schedules. And within a couple of generations, the entire memory of first sleep and second sleep just vanished. It disappeared so completely that, when that historian first found the phrase, almost nobody alive had heard of it. Now, I'll be honest with you here, because this channel doesn't do fairy tales. Not every historian fully agrees on how universal this two-sleep pattern was. Some argue the evidence is patchy, more common in some places than others, but the references are real. They're everywhere in old writing, and most historians accept that segmented sleep was genuinely widespread. So the big idea holds. The night used to be a very different place, but okay, the two sleeps are the famous part. Let's talk about the part nobody mentions, the actual bed. Because if the schedule sounds kind of cozy, the bed will fix that. For a medieval peasant, a bed might just be a sack stuffed with straw on the floor. And straw is wonderful if you're a bug. Medieval beds were absolutely crawling with life. Fleas, lice, bed bugs. The straw trapped warmth, moisture, and crumbs, which is basically a 5-star resort for insects. People would sometimes change the straw, but the bugs always came back. You weren't sleeping alone in that bed, even if you were the only human in it. And often, you weren't even the only human. Beds were expensive, so families shared them. Parents, kids, sometimes grandparents, all piled into one bed for warmth. And if you traveled and stayed at an inn, you'd very likely share a bed with total strangers. That was completely normal. You'd pay for a spot in a bed, climb in next to a snoring merchant you'd never met, and try to sleep. You just had to hope the stranger next to you didn't have too many fleas of his own to share. Now think about what these people smelled like. We've talked on this channel about how rarely medieval people bathed. Now put several of them, unwashed, into one straw bed full of insects in a room with no ventilation, with a fire smoking in the corner. That's the air you're breathing all night. And it gets better. In a peasant house, the animals often slept inside too. Pigs, chickens, maybe a cow, sharing the building to keep everyone warm and to keep the animals from being stolen. So your peaceful medieval night is you, your whole family, a few strangers worth of bugs and livestock, all breathing the same smoky air in the dark. Sweet dreams. There's one more detail that always surprises people. A lot of medieval folks didn't sleep lying flat. In some regions, people slept propped up, half sitting against the headboard or on a slope of pillows and bolsters. Part of it was medical belief. Some thought lying completely flat was dangerous, that it let fluids pool in your body or invited illness. Part of it was just the lumpy, shared, bug-filled bed, making it more comfortable to sit up a bit. Either way, the image of everyone lying neatly flat under a blanket is wrong. People dozed off sitting halfway up, in the dark, packed together. And while we're in that bed, let's talk about what you're wearing in it. For a lot of medieval people, the answer was whatever they had on during the day, or nothing at all. Plenty of peasants slept in the same rough tunic they'd worn all day, because they didn't own a separate set of clothes just for sleeping. Others slept naked under shared blankets, packed together for warmth. But there's one piece of medieval sleepwear that did matter, the nightcap. That floppy pointed hat you've seen in old drawings wasn't a joke. Your head loses a lot of heat. The room was freezing, the fire died down overnight, and there was no insulation in the walls. So people pulled a cap over their heads to keep warm through the night. It also conveniently kept some of the bed's lice out of your hair. Some of them. Now here's a question you've probably never asked. In a world with no alarm clocks, no phones, and no real way to tell time in the dark, how did anyone know when to wake up? The honest answer is they mostly didn't, not precisely. They woke with the light or when their body had had enough. For that middle of the night waking, there was no alarm at all. The body just naturally surfaced after a few hours, the way Ekirch describes it. In towns, you had a few helpers. Church bells rang at set hours through the night for prayers, so the sound of distant bells could tell you roughly how deep into the night you were. Roosters did their part at dawn, whether you liked it or not. And in some cities, there were night watchmen who called out the hours as they patrolled the dark streets. So your sense of time at night wasn't a clock. It was bells, birds, a shouting man with a lantern, and the rhythm of your own two sleeps. So let's put the whole night back together. The sun goes down, there's nothing to do, so you head to bed early. You climb onto a straw mattress already full of fleas, next to your family or a stranger, propped half upright, with a pig somewhere in the room. You fall into your first sleep. A few hours later, around midnight, you wake up. For an hour, in near total darkness, you pray or talk or tend the fire or make a baby. Then you sink back down into your second sleep until the sun comes up and the whole filthy, crowded, strangely peaceful routine starts again. And here's the thing I keep coming back to. We treat our 8 hours in one block sleep like it's the natural, correct, ancient way humans are supposed to rest. But it might be the weird one, the new one, the version invented by light bulbs and work schedules in the last 200 years. For thousands of years before that, humans woke in the middle of the night and didn't panic about it. They didn't lie there stressed that they were broken for being awake at 2 a.m. They just used the time and drifted back down when they were ready. So the next time you wake up in the dead of night and can't get back to sleep, maybe you're not broken at all. Maybe for one quiet hour, you're just sleeping like a medieval peasant, minus the fleas, minus the pig, and minus the stranger snoring next to you. So tell me, could you live with 2 sleeps a night in that bed, in that room? Because the way you sleep tonight would have looked completely insane to almost every human who ever lived. And honestly, the bed was the comfortable part. Like what they did when they actually got sick in that bed, that's a whole different kind of nightmare.